Really interesting fight coming up this weekend. Now, this is a rebooking originally scheduled for UFC Vegas 27. Both of these guys weighed in, they faced off, and then due to health and safety protocols, the fight was scratched. But we get it for UFC Vegas 30. You got Yancy Medeiros. That's the guy that's fought a lot of really big names in his time, not just with the UFC, but Strikeforce as well. He's taking on the Bosnian Bomber, Damir Hadzovic. Matt, I was eager to see this fight through 3 shows ago and add a pay-per-view in there. Now we get to see it coming up this weekend, but listen, it would be a shame to spoil a perfectly good video. So with everything set in mind, we'll flip it back to the old video, we'll update the odds, and we'll offer you our final picks and predictions. Yancy Medeiros, crowd favorite, 5-time bonus winner with the UFC. 75 G's, baby! That's what they're saying these days. Now, I don't know if that's going to extend to fight nights. I don't know if it was because everything's bigger in Texas, but Vegas has to get ready for this fight, which was originally scheduled between Hadzovic and Nicolas. And while I would have loved that fight, in steps Yancy Medeiros on short notice. You know exactly what you're going to get out of him. It's either going to be one of the wildest fights you've ever seen, or way too much camaraderie with Donald Cerrone and his grandmother in a really, really odd one. But overall, Yancy Medeiros, very well-rounded. Fought a middleweight once with Strikeforce, which is crazy. And I think that thick boy picture is a Sherdog picture. But coming into this one on a little bit of a salty run, if you really look into the 5-on-in, it's not great. He's lost his last 3 to Cowboy Cerrone, Gregor Gillespie, and Lando Venata. And if you look at it for Damir Hadzovic, same deal, 2-3. You look at the losses, Alan Patrick over 3 years ago. He beats Nick Hein by split. He beats Polo Reyes, yikes. He loses to Christos Iagos, you lose to Renato Moicano. The only thing that bugs me out of all of those, like, you think of Damir Hadzovic in your mind. You look at the picture that we have over there, and he's kind of like hunched over. But when you watch Damir Hadzovic fight, he's got that really high tie stance. He throws really good kicks. He's good boxing. He's good in and out. He struggles a little bit with the ground game sometimes, and we saw that in the fight against Moicano, where it was like, okay, we're going to box. And then Moicano gets him in a body lock, trips him, takes him down. Moicano's in his guard, and he's like, I don't really like this anymore. So Moicano just stands up. Hadzovic lazily stands back up, and what does Moicano do? Inserts himself behind his back, pulls him down, and chokes him out. And then they had a weird exchange after that, because they're not friends. But in a fight like this, for Damir Hadzovic, he's out of Arte Suave now. He's working with, I don't know, Kenneth Berg. When's he ever coming to the UFC? 2020 was the year of Kenneth Berg rumors, and Penny Kianzad also there. It's an interesting fight for Hadzovic going from Mata to now Yancy Medeiros, who's back in Hawaii training with Max Holloway at Gracie Technics in Honolulu.
This is a fight to figure out who's going to Bellator. And I hate that I have to say that, but let's be honest. I do think the loser of this is probably going to get cut. Because for Damir Hadzovic, like, you've had your opportunities. You fought Renato Moicano, who had so much hype down at 145. And let's be honest. Renato Moicano has never really been what we were promised. Like, he's a good fighter, but his best win is definitely the win over Cub Swanson. And a win over Cub Swanson. The win over Calvin Kattar was nice, but it's very early in Kattar's career. Now, I would say, yes, you got me there. Calvin Kattar is the better win. But when you look back, the biggest win of his career, especially at the time, was the Cub Swanson win. And then you look at Moicano up at lightweight. Okay, listen, getting knocked out by Fiziev, that's going to happen. It's going to happen to a lot of guys, and I'm assuming it's going to happen to a lot of ranked guys sooner rather than later. But still, he just looks so flat in that performance that when you lose to Renato Moicano at lightweight, I have a lot of questions about you fighting other lankier guys at that weight class. And it's not like Yancy Medeiros shares many similarities with Renato Moicano. I mean, build-wise, they're both kind of tall and thin. The thing I'm worried about in this fight is kind of the same thing we talked about after the Yancy Medeiros Lando Venata fight. You can get that great version of Yancy Medeiros where it's, oh, I'm going to flick the jab out there, I'm going to get cracked, I'm going to get into one of these crazy wars. Or you're going to get the version of Yancy Medeiros who's a little bit tentative, because he does realize that, like, those wars start to cause a toll on you, and I just don't think Yancy Medeiros has the same level of durability that he did earlier on in his UFC career. It's nothing against Yancy Medeiros, it's just, you can't have crazy fights with Cowboy, the Brazilian or the American version, and the likes in the lightweight division, and then just expect to continue to be able to have fights like that in his career. And this is a guy you have to remember, he fought at lightweight all the way back when Dustin Poirier was first on his run at lightweight. Now, Medeiros missed weight all the way back then. It's always something that I think about when I think about Yancy Medeiros, because after he fought Eric Silva, he said, hey, I'm probably never going to go back down to lightweight, like, this is a really big win for me at welterweight. But that's my problem. he had a big win over Eric Silva at welterweight. It's been a while since Eric Silva was a big win at welterweight. I understand that was UFC 212. It was like Hawaii versus Brazil with Max Holloway fighting Jose Aldo at the top of the card. But my problem with Yancy Medeiros is I feel like we let the excitement of his fights get in the way of his skill set. With Yancy Medeiros, I think he's a decent fighter, and I think he would be considered a decent volume striker. But with Medeiros, he's not the most durable guy in the world. So if he is in those extended exchanges on the feet, I'm always worried he's going to get clipped, and especially at 155 with him cutting so much weight. I don't know, I'm just worried about the overall durability of Medeiros down at 155, and that's not a concern I have about Hadzovic.
All right, so Damir Hadzovic, Yancy Medeiros, I mean, we loved the matchup before. Now, in full transparency, it is a tricky one. I mean, again, Yancy Medeiros, you wouldn't think is the younger fighter in this one, but he obviously has so much more experience than Damir Hadzovic on the big stage in the UFC. And from Damir Hadzovic, we've seen some really, really good performances in the octagon. Mix those in with just absolute defensive lapses, like his last time out against Renato Moicano. So he went from UFC Vegas 27, where he could walk around freely, strut his stuff. Now he kind of has to do the side-eye when he meets Moicano in the elevator. And those guys had really bad blood. But in this fight coming in this weekend, Damir Hadzovic opened a -128 favorite. He's now about a -148. So the line's moved towards Hadzovic. And if you look at it for that ever-experienced Yancy Medeiros, he opened a +108. He's at a +121. If we have a look at the Topology votes, they're as much a surprise to us as they are to you. Holy smokes, 898 total votes, 65% Medeiros, 77% by decision for the 35% that have Hadzovic, 69% by decision. Most fans predicting this one to go to decision. Again, Medeiros is training with Holloway and the team over in Hawaii. And you've got Damir Hadzovic out of Arte Suave. What's your final take here?
So, I guess if you give me a minute, this could take a second. Yancy Medeiros is a fighter who, like you had said, he had main events. He's been on the big stage for a while. When you think about Yancy Medeiros, at least I don't think of a guy who's the curtain jerk of a fight night. You know what I mean? Like, Yancy Medeiros at one point in his career was a guy at 170 who you had to watch out for. Now at 155, and this really is the big part of my argument, you saw in his first run in the UFC, the weight cut did get to him, and eventually he was forced to move from 155 up to 170, and he had a decent level of success at 170, and then after he moved back down to 155, we just haven't seen the same fighter. And people always bring up Roy Jones Jr. when he went up to heavyweight, and then when he went back down to light heavyweight, he was just never really the same fighter. And listen, I don't know if that was the same thing with Yancy Medeiros, but he just never really seemed like the same guy after he's come back down to 155. He doesn't really have the volume that he once did. I don't love his power at the weight division either. For me, I just don't look at Yancy Medeiros, and there's nothing that pops out that says, wow, he can go out there and finish a fight via X. He can knock you out, don't get me wrong, he can submit you, but he's not so good at either that I can really trust him to go out there and get a finish at any point throughout this fight. And you bring up some of the defensive lapses of Hadzovic, I can't really counter any of those arguments, but I still do like Damir Hadzovic in this fight. I just don't think, even if Damir has somehow a big defensive lapse or some little hiccup in his mind, I still think Yancy isn't the fighter who's going to be able to go out there and get a finish based off that. I don't like the power of Yancy at this division. I don't like his takedown defense either. It's just, for me, I feel like Yancy Medeiros, even though he is the younger fighter, has accomplished a lot more in his career. And when we talk about the experience of Medeiros, we have to bring up the damage at this point and not just the experience. And I do feel like the scale has kind of tipped to where he has taken quite a bit of damage. And at 155, I just don't think this is his place for him.
And I mean, you look at it for Yancy Medeiros, definitely the tougher schedule in his last number of fights. I mean, in the last 5, again, and we talked about it, but Eric Silva 4 years ago was the big win. Alex Oliveira, the big win. He loses to Donald Cerrone, but that was still like a high level Donald Cerrone. That was pre-Conor McGregor Donald Cerrone.
He lost 3 fights in a row, though, before that.
He lost to Gillespie, and he loses to Lando Venata, so we continue to go down the scale. Now, again, you talked about the scale, the fact that he struggled, or 155, a bit of a struggle. He came in right on the dot. He looked good on the scale for the fight that was originally supposed to take place, as did Damir Hadzovic, the smaller fighter in terms of height, in terms of reach. His last 2 times out, lost to Christos Giagos a couple of years ago, and then a year and 3 months ago against Renato Moicano, where he just looked lost. And listen, when fighters just look lost, like Nikolai Negamarianu when he took on Saparbek Safarov, it's a really weird spot going into the next one. So for me personally, I wouldn't have it on my card. I ever so slightly edge Damir Hadzovic, because when this guy gets in the fight in a pocket, he's a very, very good fighter. And if he can draw that fight out of Yancy Medeiros, it should be interesting. But again, as was said, if Yancy takes everything that he learned when he went back over to Hawaii and he comes out with a very grappling-oriented, jiu-jitsu-oriented game plan, could be an easy win for Medeiros. But for me, I'm going with Hadzovic.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%.
Both of us going with Bosnia and Herzegovina's own Damir Hadzovic. Make sure you check out the rest of the videos. Again, this is one of 2 bookings that's kind of been shuffled around. We have Julija Avila. She's taking on Julija Stoliarenko. And then you've got some great fights up at the top. 2 heavyweight pairings. OSP taking on Boser, and you also have Gane taking on Alexander Volkov. You're not going to miss any of those. Keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, and as we always say, let's get into it.